At 74, I fell on my way to buy groceries and cook for my 48-year-old daughter, who was divorced for the third time. A passerby took me to the hospital, but my daughter scolded me for not cooking on time. The hospital demanded payment for the surgery, but my children, who had received huge sums from the demolition of our old family home, fought over who should pay and who should take care of me, with my life hanging by a thread. My husband lent my life-saving money to his childhood sweetheart's son to buy a wedding home. In despair, I took my last breath on the cold hospital bed. Opening my eyes, I found myself back at the eve of the house demolition and property distribution, when I was pushed to the ground. Memories from my past life flooded in instantly, leaving me completely stunned. I had returned to the year I turned 50, just as our old family home was about to be demolished. The Pang family was about to receive 5 apartments and a whopping 3 million yuan. The young children angrily shouted about the unfair distribution, while old man Flynn Pang, squeezed in the middle, turned red in the face and broke into a sweat from anxiety. No one noticed me, who was carrying a plate of food. Being pushed to the ground, the sharp pain from hitting the doorframe snapped me back to my senses. I sprang to my feet and flipped the New Year's Eve dinner table over in one swift motion. What's all the yelling about? If you're going to fight, then no one eats. The unfilial children screamed and scattered like mice splashed with hot oil. In my second life, I laughed. Crazy woman, are you out of your mind? The old man slapped me hard across the face, and instantly, half of my face swelled up like a pig's head. Mom, have you lost your mind? Ah, my new coat. The children were shouting in a furious rage, covering my face. I silently walked to the kitchen, grabbed a kitchen knife, and hurled it at the old bastard's forehead. You're the one who's lost your mind. Flynn Pang was so terrified his eyes rolled back, and he toppled over backward with the chair. The shaved-off strands of hair fluttered down, as if they were the remnants of his shattered courage. I calmly picked up my chopsticks, unhurriedly eating the untouched dumplings, and said coldly, "Not a single penny or brick from this demolition property will any of you get your hands on." The steaming hot dumplings were delicious. In previous years, by the time I finished my chores and sat down at the table, only cold leftovers remained. I'd hastily grab a bite before clearing the dishes to make space for the afternoon mahjong game. The whole family was lively and joyful, while only I was so busy I couldn't straighten my back or get a proper meal. They say this is called the sweet burden. In my past life, I lived a full 74 years but never tasted even a hair's breadth of sweetness in that so-called burden. The young children seemed to have their faces softened by the passage of time, far from the detestable visages they bore in their previous lives. Back then, I lay in agony with a broken sternum, my soul scattered, the truth grotesque. This old relic of mine has become a hot potato that even my closest kin shun. Eldest Pang Jongwo washed his hands of it. If it weren't for buying groceries and cooking for third brother, would Mom have fallen? If you dare to sponge off the old, then you must pay up. The second son, Pang Jianjun, crossed his arms and said, Mom always favored you, the eldest, and the third brother the most. A bowl of egg custard was split between you two, while I could only lick the bowl. Whoever should pay knows it in their heart. The youngest daughter, Pang Chunhua, spat out a melon seed shell with a flip of her lips. I'm a divorced, childless, penniless old woman. What do I have to contribute? My worthless life. The old man stammered. I didn't think the family had any urgent needs, so I lent the money to Aunt Meiji next door. Her son Daong was in a hurry to buy a wedding home, so the whole family has money for everything, except my life-saving funds. The past is too painful to recall. This life shall not betray myself. With my stomach full, I slipped into the inner room, gathering savings books and ID cards before bundling them into a grocery plastic bag. The clamor in the outer room gradually grew louder again. I disagree. How come Big Brother gets 2 houses and still gets a share of the money? I'm divorced, homeless, with no children, and not even a single house. Do you want me to freeze to death? Third brother, you're being ungrateful. After your divorce, you've been living off Mom and Dad, and what have we brothers said? A married daughter is like spilled water. You can't take it back. Now you want to come back and claim a share of the house and money. No family follows such nonsense. Exactly. Our Pang family's lineage depends on our little Jie. We deserve an extra house. It seemed they thought I was just throwing a tantrum. My children didn't take my words about not dividing the property seriously at all. Indeed, all these years I've been meekly revolving around the kitchen, doing nothing but cooking, washing dishes, and taking care of the kids. Anyone could yell at me, and I had no authority whatsoever. Even the family dog, when unhappy, would bark at me a couple of times. I still remember the New Year's Eve dinner in my previous life. Though I didn't go mad, it ended in an ugly scene. The old Pang family residence was demolished, and I heard the compensation would be 5 apartments and 3 million yuan in relocation fees, though it's still just a pie in the sky. Everyone wants the biggest slice. The children had a huge fight over who gets how many apartments and how much money, even coming to blows. I frantically tried to intervene and got hit a few times in the chaos. My arm hurt so much I couldn't lift it, and I had to grit my teeth through the Spring Festival, applying medicated oil several times in the middle of the night. This time I went berserk and flipped the table, but it didn't seem to make much difference. It truly echoes that old saying, "Men die for wealth, birds perish for food." Ignoring the mess in the house, I grabbed my bag and walked out. The old man was furious, shouting behind me, "Li Guixiang, you've gone too far. I haven't even settled the score with you for going crazy during the New Year, and now you dare to run out. I'll break your legs." Ha! That's like farting on an airplane, resounding through the heavens. Oh, I'm so scared. Leaving home, I felt refreshed and invigorated. And even the sleety weather seemed particularly delightful. I checked into a 3-star hotel in the city center. The swirling snowflakes illuminated the dazzling night view outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, while the TV programs remained as lively as ever. After scheduling a meeting with the lawyer, I hung up the phone and stared out the window, lost in thought. In my previous life, Flynn Pang couldn't resist the persistent nagging of his children and the village's instigation. The 3 million yuan and 5 houses he received from the demolition compensation were quickly divided among his children before he could even warm up to them. Each of the 2 sons received 2 apartments and 2 million yuan, while the youngest daughter was given only 500,000 yuan without any property. Flynn Pang successfully snatched the plaque of harmonious home from his cousin Pang Yugui, but this sowed the seeds of family destruction. Wealth is the beginning of happiness, but also the source of misfortune. At first, the children who benefited would visit every 10 days or half a month, but once the new properties were transferred and the demolition funds were received, they didn't even check in for half a year. The flu virus was rampant, and both of us elderly folks were delirious with high fever, yet not a single child sent us even a pill or a vegetable. In the end, it was a young neighbor who couldn't bear to watch, took our money, and helped order medicine and meals online, saving our old lives. It was also from that time that Flynn Pang developed a chronic lung condition and passed away within a couple of years. Not long after the old man died, our daughter Pang Chunhua came back crying and making a scene about her divorce. I couldn't bring myself to turn her away, so I had no choice but to take care of her with good food and comfort. This service lasted over 20 years. Days longer and more unbearable than the first half of my life. Chunhua never lifted a finger for household chores, never contributed a penny, yet never hesitated to spend. Within half a year, she squandered what little savings I had left. They say daughters are their mother's warm little coats, but mine was stuffed with black-hearted cotton. Seeing there was no money left at home, she would dress up alluringly and go out to fool around, staying away night after night. I could only survive by picking up leftover vegetables at the closing time of the market. I truly couldn't understand. How could an honest man like me have raised such a rebellious daughter? In the end, all I can say is, children are nothing but debts. Setting aside my chaotic thoughts, I slept soundly through the night. I went to the scheduled law firm with high spirits. Yes, to avoid repeating the mistakes of my past life, I made a decision: divorce, since things are so entangled. Can't I just walk away? After some inquiries, it turns out that the calamity of blood ties is truly not something one can easily avoid. Lawyer Zhong said that divorce cases like mine, where the old family property is the husband's premarital asset after decades of marriage, are the hardest to win. If I divorce, I likely won't get a share of the demolition compensation or the relocation housing, since this property was passed down through the Pang family and counts as premarital assets. I can only claim a portion of the subsequent renovation or decoration costs, so after decades of hard work, I've just been a free nanny and childbearer for nothing. This is truly absurd. Fortunately, money can make the devil push the millstone. No wonder he's such a renowned divorce lawyer. Just a few words of his strategic planning put my mind at ease. After finalizing our plan, I happened to receive a call from my eldest son, Pang Jongwo, urging reconciliation. I took the opportunity to go home. After all, only by returning could I make the next move, right? To my surprise, the house wasn't as chaotic as I had imagined, though a bit messy. It had clearly been tidied up. Perhaps one of the daughters-in-law had grown a bit of conscience and cleaned up before leaving. As soon as I stepped into the yard, I heard a high-pitched, exaggerated giggle coming from the main room. "Oh, Brother Pang, you're just like when we were kids. Your jokes are hilarious, even funnier than a comedy skit." That familiar tone. So in the few days I was gone, the old widow next door had made herself at home in my house. Chen Meiji was Pang's childhood sweetheart, having grown up together since they were bare-bottomed kids. In her youth, she was famously known as the flower of the village across the surrounding area. Back then, she had high standards and looked down on the local farm boys. After much picking and choosing, she ended up marrying a city official. Unfortunately, fate was unkind. She lost her husband at a young age and couldn't get along with her in-laws, so she returned to Pang's village. Not long after, she gave birth to a posthumous child, Chen Daong. Coincidentally, I had given premature birth to my daughter Chunhua around the same time. Since the children were the same age and we were neighbors, our families became quite close. A lonely widow struggling to raise a child alone, with both farm and household chores piling up, I often asked old Pang to lend a hand. Before long, our two families became as close as one. Country folks are warm-hearted. Today bringing a bunch of scallions, tomorrow helping carry a few loads of manure. I grew accustomed to such kindness, having lived a second life. Those past events churned in my mind countless times before I finally sensed something amiss. I'm not much of a hand at anything, just good for a laugh. Unlike you, with your fine cooking, if it weren't for your help these past few days, us old and young in this house would have starved to death. After decades of marriage, I never knew he had the talent for telling jokes. I must be the real joke here. Yeah, it's the new year after all. We're just here for some fun. I don't know what's gotten into Sister Guixiang, getting so angry during the holiday season. Don't even mention that woman. She's gone too far. Just wait till she gets back. I'll show her who's boss. Look at what you're saying. My sister-in-law is such a clever woman. How could you bear to lay a hand on her? Back then, you're really like a Longjing tea from '82, such an old green tea, almost turned into tea dust, yet still dwelling on the past, drinking my tea, flirting with my man, and still wanting a piece of my gossip. Truly like fighting a tiger bare-assed, shameless and reckless. I yanked up the door curtain, grabbed a broom, and started wildly swinging at the two people on the kang. Chen Meiji covered her face and hurriedly fled, even leaving her shoes behind. Flynn Pang curled up in a corner, bracing for a storm of blows. Guixiang, it's a misunderstanding. Meiji came to help clean up the house. You weren't home, the kids are all gone, and I can't manage the mess. Meiji was just being kind by lending a hand, Flynn Pang pleaded, breathless and guilty from the beating. It seems this man isn't so tough after all. In my past life, he beat me so often. 3 days. 2 beatings. That he left me deaf in one ear, and I still didn't dare fight back. This time, I'll make sure he gets a taste of fists and clubs too, perhaps from the beating during the day and the shock. Flynn Pang actually started running a fever at night, babbling deliriously and convulsing in fits. By the time the ambulance took him to the hospital and got him settled, it was already broad daylight, and not a single one of his children was anywhere to be seen. In my past life, I was afraid of disturbing my children's lives, so I endured all my illnesses and pains alone. Even when I had thyroid cancer surgery, I forced myself to go to the hospital by myself. Flynn Pang thought I had gone back to my parents' home and accused me of favoring outsiders. This time, I won't indulge them anymore. I called the eldest, the second, and the third one by one. If they don't come to the hospital soon, the cash cow of the Pang family will collapse. When that happens, who else but me will have the final say over the family's relocation housing and compensation money? The 3 children arrived in a flurry, gathering around the old man who had just regained consciousness after his fever broke, chattering excitedly. The eldest son, Jongwo, said that the school urgently needed materials for his professional title evaluation. Since their father was out of danger, he had to return early to prepare his research materials, aiming to earn the professor title and bring honor to the Pang family. The second son, Jianjun, said he couldn't leave his restaurant's supply duties and hurried off, promising to cook some dishes to nourish his father later. The youngest daughter, Chunhua, glanced at her watch and said she was running late for a movie date. After planting a quick kiss on the old man's cheek, she dashed out the door in a whirlwind. Damn, they were pushing and shoving each other without paying a single penny for the medical bills. The old man stared at me eagerly, probably both thirsty and hungry, expecting me to wait on them hand and foot again. This is like the old lady getting into bed, just making me laugh. I ignored him, dusted myself off, and went straight home. In my previous life, when I had thyroid cancer and underwent surgery alone, no one even offered me a sip of water. I even had to sign the surgical risk consent form myself. Just wait and see. Though the old man is sick, the compensation house and money from the demolition haven't been divided yet. He's still a hot commodity. Sure enough, those 2 blockheads went home, got some advice from their wives, and rushed back to the hospital by mid-afternoon to take turns keeping vigil. They almost came to blows over who would lose a night's chance to get close to the old man. Taking advantage of when no one was home, I turned the old house upside down and finally found what I was looking for. Who knows what kind of sweet talk he was fed, but by the time I got back to the hospital, the old bastard started going on again about dividing the property and money. I asked around and found out Chen Meiji had come by in the afternoon. Yugui said all the compensation money from their demolished house went to their son. When should we divide ours too? Flynn Pang studied the hospital test results under the lamp, frowning and sighing. Just in case something happens to me someday, at least the kids will have something. What? Did your sister Meiji praise Pang Yugui for being such a good manager of the household? Woman, what nonsense are you spouting? I'm just thinking about how filial the kids are. Taking care of me at night and still dragging themselves to work during the day. Who do you think I'm feeling sorry for? Aren't they all the flesh of your flesh? Just put that idea out of your mind. Flynn Pang, let me tell you, old man, not a single penny of this house or money will you touch. Use that pig brain of yours. If we divide the money now, who's going to take care of a sick old man like you? Seeing him act so recklessly just to spite others really makes me angry. In my past life, I was too timid and weak, which allowed that damned old man to control me. Our children are filial. How could they possibly abandon us? Their own parents. I glanced at him and said, if you want to divide it, fine. Tomorrow we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get a divorce, split the assets 50-50. I won't touch what's mine, but if you insist on dividing yours, that's your business. Everything's fine. Why talk about divorce? The old bastard's eyes darted nervously toward the phone before he guiltily flung the door curtain aside and stormed out, probably off to tip someone off again. Before long, my son, daughter-in-law, and daughter had all arrived, each terrified that my divorce would carve away half the family assets, slicing into their precious share. The eldest, a pedantic scholar, kept repeating the same line, who gets divorced at this age? It's just asking to be laughed at. The second son also advised. Young couples grow old together, 100 years of cultivation to share a pillow. Surprisingly, for a rough man like him, though his words were incoherent, he still remembered the bond of marriage. I have only one thing to say, staying together is fine, but if the demolition compensation isn't divided, then there's no staying together. The children, who had been arguing back and forth just moments ago, instantly fell as silent as chickens. After an awkward silence that lasted several seconds, the second son's wife spoke up with difficulty. Mom, if you don't want to divide it, then don't. We don't want your and Dad's house or money. as long as you and Dad are well, that's all that matters." Before she could finish, the eldest son's wife cut in. "Exactly, Mom, it's your own decision to divorce, not something we forced on you. Besides, even if you do go through with it, shouldn't the property distribution be discussed with Jongwo?" And Jianjun, she was the type who couldn't hold back, voicing the question everyone was most concerned about but too embarrassed to ask. "Jongwo, Jianjun, Chunia, what do you three think? How much should Mom get?" "Mom, listen to you. You raised the three of us and took care of Dad for decades. No amount of money would be too much for you." The eldest son eagerly stated his position. "But look, Dad is sick now and needs care. After all, a day as husband and wife means 100 days of kindness." "Stop right there. I said I can stay married. As long as you agree not to divide the property for now, everything will be yours after we both pass away." I raised my hand to cut him off. "But don't you dare guilt-trip me. But think carefully, if we don't divorce, the compensation for the demolition will be considered joint marital property. If I don't agree, no one can take a share. I've already consulted a lawyer. Anyone who dares to steal my money or my house can expect to see me in court." As the argument grew more heated, the youngest daughter, Pang Chunhua, couldn't help but shout, "Mom, the Pang family's old house was built by Grandpa when he was young. It counts as Dad's premarital property. If you divorce, you won't get a single penny." "Huh, so after 2 divorces, all the lessons you learned were applied to your mother? This is what I've raised with all my heart since childhood. Giving her the best food and drink, never letting her suffer even a finger's worth of pain. And this is the fine result." The ward instantly fell silent. The sons were dumbfounded, while the daughters-in-law seemed lost in thought. As for Flynn Pang, his eyes flashed with wild delight. You. I was so angry that my face turned pale, clutching my chest as sweat poured down like rain. Pang Chunhua seemed to realize she had misspoken and quickly ran out to call for doctors and nurses. A fast began simultaneously, only to end abruptly without rhyme or reason. Only scattered thoughts remain, watching the world's frantic, ghostly panic, thanks to my little black-hearted cotton-padded jacket. Or else this show wouldn't have been easy to keep going. An eagle catching rabbits never dives into the grass. It waits for the rabbit to leap out before striking with deadly precision. And I intend to be that waiting eagle, yes. Lawyer Zhong had warned me long ago that the biggest challenge in this battle would be proving that the Pang family's old house is our marital joint property. After all, this house was entirely arranged by the old patriarch of the Pang family, Flynn Pang's father, during his lifetime, a 2-courtyard compound facing south, built entirely with large blue bricks. It was the highest standard in the countryside at the time. To secure a wife for Flynn Pang, the only male heir in 3 generations. The old man heard that my mother had given birth to 5 boys and 3 girls in one go, all of whom survived. Calculating that I must be fertile too, he spared no expense to arrange this marriage. He promised that as long as I married him, half of this courtyard would be my betrothal gift. Of course, back in those days, no one took such verbal jokes seriously. After all, once married, we'd naturally become one family. What does it matter whose courtyard it is? Isn't it just a place to live? Who would have thought that after enduring decades of poverty and hardship, just as we were about to prosper, our marriage couldn't hold on any longer? I want to prove that in the nearly 40 years since I married here at 16, working like an ox or a horse, giving birth to one child after another, and raising the little ones through all the hardships, day after day tending and fixing up this yard, I have my share in it. Might as well ask me to prove my mother is my mother. At least my mother can talk. This yard, no matter how loud I call, it won't answer me. The strategy given by Lawyer Zhong contained only 8 words: show weakness to the enemy, use weakness to control strength. I was so angry that my vision darkened, and my hands kept trembling. Fortunately, the doctors and nurses arrived promptly, diagnosing me with signs of hypertension and cardiovascular disease, advising me to calm down and stay in the hospital for observation for a few days. With both parents hospitalized, arranging their care became another major challenge. After much back and forth, the 3 siblings actually managed to create a duty roster. Every time you come to see me, you try to persuade me. First, the eloquent eldest son, Jongwo, was entrusted with the important task of having a heart-to-heart talk with me. Everyone values their eldest son, and I also feel sorry for Jongwo, who was born in hard times and endured many years of hardship with us since childhood. I've always loved him the most. Mom, are you feeling better? I've been so busy with school lately that I haven't had time to visit you, the eldest son said non-stop while peeling an apple. I closed my eyes and ignored him. Look at you. We're all family. Why get so angry? Dad just wanted to divide the relocation compensation fairly for the sake of family harmony. If you don't agree, I'll take the lead and refuse my share. Really, absolutely. Truer than iron. Mom, you know me. Ever since I was a kid digging up a few wild potatoes in the mountains, I'd always save them for you. The wild yam you kept pressed against your belly is all squashed flat now. I muttered to myself, Mom, I'd rather go hungry myself than not show my filial respect to you. How could you treat your own son like a thief to be guarded against? As he spoke, his eyes reddened, and his voice choked with emotion. Haven't I always listened to you in everything? Don't worry. As long as you don't agree, we absolutely won't split up, Jongwo declared resolutely, as if he were about to swear an oath to the heavens. But he didn't realize, while he did give me the wild yam, in his youthful innocence, he probably didn't know the smell of secretly eaten grilled fish still lingered on him. The second child kept whining about being poor and miserable, while the third used her own post-divorce plight as a cautionary tale, trying to sway my decision. Only Qian Meiji was different. Somehow she got wind of the news and came bearing chicken soup, pouring her heart out to persuade me to divorce. Sister-in-law, don't take this the wrong way, but if a man could ever be relied on, pigs would fly. Honestly, a weak-willed and useless man isn't worth keeping. You're so capable. You could make it big anywhere. Her fake concern and barely concealed glee were truly nauseating. Hey, seeing it this way, I really can't bear to disappoint her. I'm not getting divorced anymore. Seeing me change my mind, the children beamed with joy. After all, no one wants to stir up trouble at this age and become the laughingstock of the village. Especially old Pang, who has been longing for that hollow honorary plaque of harmonious family awarded by the village. I heard old man Pang was obsessed with this matter, still thinking about it on his deathbed. Seeing that I had softened my stance, Flynn Pang also compromised. The demolition compensation funds could be divided later, but the children's names must be added to the property deed of the old house. As for those who don't bear the Pang surname, naturally, they don't have this privilege, including me, a beast of burden who has slaved day and night for nearly 40 years. Ultimately, the co-owners listed on the property deed of the old house became Flynn Pang, Pang Jongwo, Pang Jianjun, and Pang Chunhua. Everyone was happy. It also suited me perfectly. With the property deed as security, the children felt at ease. No matter how it's divided, it will certainly be divided eventually. As for how much each gets, that will depend on their own abilities when the time comes. Flynn Pang also strutted with arrogance. No matter how much that crazy woman makes a scene, I'm still the one in charge at home. As the saying goes, pride comes before a fall, and extreme joy begets sorrow. Seeing wealth within reach, Jongwo and his wife eagerly selected a study abroad agency, paid a hefty deposit, and went all out to arrange for their only daughter, Minmin, to study overseas. The second son, Jianjun, hired a renovation team and planned to expand the restaurant by giving it a complete makeover. The young daughter Chunhua was overjoyed to travel abroad. Applying for multiple credit cards and indulging in a shopping spree, she even tried her luck at the casinos in Macau, going all in for the experience. Heaven wants to destroy someone, it first makes them mad. Before long, the creditors came knocking at her door. The first to implode was Chunhua. After experiencing the thrills of Macau's casinos, she returned home with an unbearable itch, unable to sit still if she skipped a single day at the mahjong parlor. Each game cost her at least a few thousand, sometimes tens of thousands. In my opinion, mahjong with such high stakes is no different from gambling. Once she lost her shirt, she maxed out her credit cards. When her credit collapsed and banks wouldn't lend to her anymore, she turned to the mahjong parlor for loans. There was a group of people in the gambling den who specifically catered to gamblers. when the craving for mahjong struck and she lost with bloodshot eyes. She was willing to borrow at any interest rate. When even the mahjong parlors refused to lend her money, Chunhua turned her attention to online microcredit. Those were just loan sharks disguised as interest-free or low-interest companies. Money was no longer money, it had become just numbers. With interest piling upon interest and debt breeding more debt, by the time she came to her senses, the amount owed had ballooned into an astronomical figure. When Flynn Pang received his first debt collection call, he initially thought it was a scam. It wasn't until friends and family started calling to question him that he realized his little daughter had stirred up a hornet's nest outside. Like father, like daughter, when Pang Chunhua refused to repay her debts, the creditors came after her father, her eldest brother, and her second brother. No one with the surname Pang was spared. The eldest brother, Jongwo, had his own mess to clean up. He and his wife had been scammed by a study abroad agency that took a 500,000 yuan deposit before disappearing. No answer to calls, no reply to texts, even the office space has been cleared out. As for the second child, just as the renovation company started work, the city was hit by a virus outbreak and locked down. No one could leave, only enter. All out-of-town renovation workers returned to their hometowns, halting the project and forcing the restaurant to close. The couple was frantic, counting on the compensation from the demolition to save them, running to the demolition office almost every other day. Little did they know, the moment they left, creditors rushed to the demolition office to apply for a freeze on the compensation funds. Once the preservation is successful, the demolition compensation will first be used to settle the debts, and the remaining amount will then be distributed to the homeowner. As for whether there will be any scraps left by then, it's hard to say. After all, Pang Chunhua was evasive and didn't dare to clarify exactly how much he owed outside. Dad, please save me. If I don't repay the debt, old man WN and his gang will chop off my hands. Give me a bigger share, and I swear I'll never gamble or play mahjong again once the debt is paid. Pang Chunhua knelt at the old man's feet, crying so hard that tears and snot ran down his neck, all while raising his hand to swear an oath. The eldest son, Jongwo, cared about his reputation and only frowned, but his wife suddenly knelt down with a thud. Dad, please save Minmin too. She's always wanted to study abroad. To pay the deposit, Jongwo and I sold everything we had and emptied our savings, only to find out, damn it, it was all a scam. Now Minmin is utterly heartbroken, refusing to eat or drink at home. Dad, you've always doted on Minmin the most. Please save her. The old man trembled as he pointed a shaking finger at his daughter. Then at his eldest son's wife, his lips quivering as he struggled to speak. The second son's wife stealthily gave her husband a kick, and Jianjun, as if his bones had turned to jelly, knelt on the ground as well. Dad, ever since I was little, I never fought or grabbed for anything. When my siblings ate egg custard, I was content just to lick the bowl. But this time it's different. If the restaurant can't open, our whole family will be left with nothing to eat. And we can't even scrape together Xiao Jie's tuition for Tsinghua. He's working so hard at school to bring honor to our ancestors, yet his father is so useless he doesn't deserve to be called a father. Please, Dad, save your only grandson, the root of our Pang family. With that, he collapsed to the ground, weeping uncontrollably. Watching his children suffer one after another, the old soft-hearted man was at a loss, torn between them all. After all, they were all his flesh and blood. Well, now that the property deeds are under your names, the money naturally belongs to you. But every household needs money, and with so much debt, we're uneducated and don't know what to do. Why don't you go ask someone who understands? Didn't the TV just air something about lawyers or legal channels the other day? Maybe you could ask them what we should do. I took a sip of hot tea and lowered my head to hide the emotions in my eyes. Yes, go consult a lawyer, eldest. You should also ask the legal experts at your university. See what they think about our situation. What's the best way forward? Flynn Pang chimed in eagerly, as if grasping at a lifeline, once they all returned from their inquiries, unanimously suggesting the objection registration method. I knew lawyer Zhong had guessed right all along. What does objection registration mean? I pretended to look completely clueless. "Oh, Mom. Objection registration means this old house was originally yours and Dad's, but your name wasn't on the property deed. Dad added all three of our names without you knowing. Now that you've found out and have objections, you need to file a formal disagreement with the Housing Registration Authority, the Property Management Office," the eldest explained while smoking, his brows furrowed. It's worth noting that he had quit smoking years ago because his wife couldn't stand the smell. If he hadn't been so genuinely upset, he probably wouldn't have started again. As for that daughter-in-law of his, the one who used to complain that the smell of smoke gave her headaches and made her nauseous, well, it seems her sense of smell has mysteriously disappeared, I told the housing office. And then what? I still looked utterly confused. After reporting and verification, they'll remove our names and put yours and Dad's on it. The second child squatted down, wiping his face, and said listlessly, "But didn't the third child say this house was your dad's premarital property, and I have no share in it?" I asked, wide-eyed and at a loss. "Mom, wasn't this house almost destroyed in the earthquake that year? You and Dad rebuilt it brick by brick, carrying mud yourselves, and made it so nice. How could it not have your contribution?" The youngest daughter, Chunny, smiled ingratiatingly. "We can all testify for you, and so can the neighbors. This house is the joint property of you and Dad," the children said in unison. Seeing my hesitation, Flynn Pang tapped his water pipe and said, "Back when my father was bedridden with paralysis, you took care of him for over a decade. Before he passed, didn't he say right by his bedside that you'd take half ownership of the house? So you do remember. You should know." The old man not only said it, he also left me a treasure. My father-in-law was shrewd all his life. In his early years, he made a fortune in business, returned to his hometown, and built a vast estate. During the special period, he decisively donated it all, securing a safe background. He then married me, a daughter of generations of poor peasants with impeccable revolutionary credentials, breaking the curse of the Pang family's 3 generations of single-line inheritance. Though bedridden for over a decade in his later years, he had me, his daughter-in-law, tending to him with utmost devotion, and thus passed away peacefully in old age. The only thing he couldn't let go of was Flynn Pang, the treasured only child he had coddled since infancy. That's why he left me this one precious thing, hoping it could turn the tide at a critical moment and save his life. But the time hasn't come yet. First, I need to confirm one thing. What happens after filing the objection? Once the objection is successfully registered, the old house will be under our names, and the new house from the demolition and the compensation money will also be in our names. Every grievance has its cause, and every debt its debtor. Since we 2 old folks don't owe any external debts, creditors naturally can't claim the property under our names. Once the new house and the demolition compensation are settled, we'll distribute them to the children. Flynn Pang exhaled smoke rings. Lost in thought. By the way, don't assume that just because it's under your name, it's yours. Eventually, everything must be distributed to the children, old Pang reminded sternly, his face dark. So, the Pang family had it all figured out. Not letting outsiders take even a penny's advantage while also guarding against me like a thief. Too bad, you can't have your cake and eat it too, actually. Lawyer Zhong explained to me in detail that even if the creditors applied for the preservation of the demolition compensation, it might not necessarily succeed, and even if it did, only Pang Chuanhua's share would be affected. But the Pang family is so calculating. They didn't want to pay back a single cent to the creditors, so they came up with this foolproof plan on their own. But now that things have come to this, can everything really go as you wish? This won't work. An objection registration can only be filed by a co-owner of the property. How can you prove that Li Guoxiang is the property owner? The staff member looked helpless. Just having the family's word isn't enough. You'd need at least some written proof. The entire Pang family was dumbfounded. They hadn't expected things to become so complicated, thinking it would be as simple as adding a name to the property deed back in the day, in rural areas. It's not uncommon for people our age to go through life without ever obtaining a marriage certificate, muddling through until the end. Who would have thought there'd come a day when proof of marital status would be needed? The family was as frantic as ants on a hot pan. When I calmly pulled out the bright red marriage certificate, Flynn Pang was stunned. When did you get this done? On the day you were discharged from the hospital. Didn't we go to that little courtyard next to the marriage registration office to sign and stamp the papers? At that time, Flynn Pang was preoccupied with the idea of premarital assets, thinking it was just hospital discharge procedures. After signing, he retreated to a corner to smoke, acting like a hands-off boss the whole time. So naturally, he had no idea I had reissued our marriage certificate. I then pulled out the will left by my father-in-law and a yellowed land deed. Flynn Pang was so shocked he even dropped his pipe. Yes, the old master had foresight. Knowing his son was easily swayed and deceived, he left a will dividing half the family estate to me, calculating that my kindness would ensure his son always had a meal to eat. There was also a village committee certificate. Back then, the old man donated most of his wealth, and the village issued a document according to his wishes. The Pang family ancestral home was to be jointly inherited by his son, Flynn Pang, and daughter-in-law, Li Guoxiang. Thanks to the old master's foresight, and thanks to me for finally waking up, with all the documentation in place, the objection registration was successfully processed, and my name was finally added to the property deed of the ancestral home. Holding the bright red property deed in my hand, I straightened my back and made up my mind, since the meat has landed in my bowl. There's no way I'm sharing it. After twists and turns, several months passed, and the demolition compensation finally arrived. The children swarmed in like flies drawn to the scent of blood. One claimed that as the eldest, they had worked the hardest, taking care of the younger siblings since childhood, and thus deserved a larger share. The one who said the only heir of the Pang family rests on his son, so he should get more. Another threatened that if she wasn't given a share of the house, she'd live off the family forever and hang herself in the Pang household. The chaotic scene nearly spiraled out of control. I grabbed the thermos and smashed it on the ground with a loud bang, the noise instantly silencing the commotion. You're really like Zhong Kuei jumping into a latrine, making trouble in the shit, catching demons. The debts outside aren't even settled yet. Do you want to end up in the police station? You promised to share with us back then, Mom. You're not going back on your word now, are you? Your dad was the one who agreed. I never promised anything. My words were like tossing a grenade into a latrine, stirring up a shitstorm. Public outrage. Flynn Pang was furious, raising his hand to slap me, but when he saw me grab a kitchen knife, his trembling hand slowly lowered. A good man doesn't live off divided family wealth. A good woman doesn't wear dowry clothes. I know money tempts the heart, and don't say I don't love you as a mother. You can divide the Pang family's property down to the last penny. Before they could even crack a smile, I added, but not a single cent of my money, Li Guoxiang's, will you touch. Don't forget, the property deed has my name on it. Without my nod, you won't get a single house. One word, if you want to divide. Then divorce, I said resolutely. Flynn Pang's eyes were bloodshot with rage, and his children exchanged glances, their initial uproar quickly subsiding into hushed discussions within mere minutes. Old Master Pang, shrewd all his life, had somehow fathered a brood of fools. I'm absolutely getting this divorce. Divorce it is, then. She'll still be our mom after all. Pang Chunhua, having been through 3 divorces, was unfazed. At first, she disagreed with the divorce because she wanted to claim more money under the guise of premarital assets. When that didn't work, she started scheming something else. Exactly. No matter what, we can't change the fact that we're flesh and blood. If Mom insists on divorcing, we can just do our filial duty to both sides, said the eldest brother Jiongwo, who, after all, was an educated man with a quick mind. Seeing his younger brother Jianjun frown so deeply he could crush a fly, and knowing he still hadn't grasped the situation, the eldest brother's wife couldn't help but add, even if they divorce, she's still your mother. We'll take care of her in her old age and show her respect after she passes away. The second brother's wife's eyes lit up instantly. Nodding eagerly, she pinched her own clueless husband from behind and winked meaningfully. Old man Pang, seeing that his children seemed to have reached an agreement, grew anxious. Divorce? I won't divorce. Who will cook for me, do the laundry, and tend to those few plots of land at home if we divorce? Just as things were about to be settled, the old man threw another wrench into the works, leaving his children gritting their teeth in frustration. But Pang Chunhua, quick-witted and sharp-tongued, spoke up, "Dad, those vegetable plots in the backyard are going to be demolished anyway, so don't worry about them. Divorce doesn't mean leaving home. Where would Mom go in the short term? She'll still be here taking care of you, and worst comes to worst, there's always Auntie Chen." At the mention of Widow Chen's name, Flynn Pang, who had been about to say something, promptly shut his mouth. Damn, the sound of those abacus beads is practically smacking me in the face. It's like a small knife cutting the butt. Eye-opening indeed, but as long as it doesn't interfere with my plans, let him dream on. The whole family has discussed it, so the divorce proceedings will be quick. The demolition compensation and the relocation housing will be split equally between me and Flynn Pang. As for the other trivial assets, I can't be bothered to fight over them. The new property deed hasn't been issued yet, so we'll split the demolition compensation money 50-50 first. Once the property deed is ready, we'll proceed with the transfer and division. Walking out of the marriage registration office, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The divorce certificate is also bright red, but it refreshes my spirit far more than any property deed ever could. Flynn Pang spat at me, furious. "Li Guixiang, once you step out of my door, don't you dare regret it. Unless you come back kneeling and kowtowing 3 times, don't even think about setting foot in the Pang family again." I sneered at the idea. Who in their right mind would willingly crawl back into that cesspit you call home after finally escaping it? "Old Pang, let me give you some unsolicited advice. We're not getting any younger. You never know when you might need money for emergencies. Take care of your health and get regular checkups." I offered him these parting words of sincerity. "How dare you curse me?" Flynn Pang flew into a rage, but was quickly ushered away by his children. In my past life, he died in agony at home, penniless and untreated during the late stages of stomach cancer. I've done my utmost to remind them, but some people just bite the hand that feeds them, failing to recognize kindness. It must be fate. How comfortable it is not having to wake up early to cook breakfast for the whole family, lying on the big bed in my new house. I gaze through the window at the azure sky outside, listening to the cheerful chirping of birds in the early morning, taking a deep breath of the crisp air. It all smells like freedom. It's been a week since the divorce. With the compensation money I received from the demolition, I bought a new house near the Central Park in the city. A modest 3-bedroom apartment, more than enough for an old lady like me. The place is also close to the hospital, just a 10-minute walk away. With housing prices low right now, I took advantage of the information gap from my rebirth and bought 2 rundown old apartments in Anyang community. Soon, this area will undergo demolition and redevelopment. With the new residential complex being affiliated to the city's experimental middle school, property prices here will skyrocket, eventually becoming unaffordable. The remaining 500,000 yuan was deposited in the bank for conservative financial management, yielding about 2,000 yuan per month in returns, enough to cover my living expenses. My children are probably too busy emptying their father's pockets to bother with me, not even a single phone call to check in. However, the good days didn't last long before the eldest sibling urgently came to ask me to return and mediate the dispute. For the old man's 1.5 million, the siblings were almost at each other's throats, unable to refuse, and with the relocation housing property deed about to be issued, I went back with them. After the divorce, Chen Maisie openly moved in as if she owned the place. An old man with 1 foot in the grave still wants to fight for it. I really admire her. Truly, fortune shifts like the river's flow. Back then, she looked down on the countryside, married into the city, changed her household registration to enjoy urban benefits, and gloated for quite a while. Now that she's returned to the village, which is slated for demolition, she no longer has local household registration and naturally gets no compensation. Moreover, back then their family had arrived as refugees fleeing disaster, so they couldn't be allocated any farmland or residential plots from the village. Even their house was just a repurposed livestock shed that the village chief kindly lent them, which meant they had no property ownership documents. Truth be told, if she had married a local villager back then, she would have naturally gained residency status. But who could have guessed she'd be so ambitious? Now she's stringing along Flynn Pang, probably trying to hitch a ride on the demolition compensation bandwagon. She was also too naive. In recent years, national policies have been so strictly regulated precisely to prevent anyone from exploiting loopholes, but given her stubborn, sky-high ambitions, she probably won't give up until she's forced to face the harsh reality. Sure enough, as soon as I stepped into the Pang household, Qian Meiji came out to greet me with an overly enthusiastic smile. "Oh, sister-in-law." "No, sister, what a rare guest. Please, come in, come in." She was practically putting on the airs of the lady of the house. The young girl Chunhua affectionately hooked her arm, looking just like a real mother and daughter. I hadn't noticed before, but standing so close together like this, the two of them really do share some resemblance. The room was bustling with energy. The whole family had gathered, as if something important was about to happen. "Oh, Sister Li, the kids are being a bit unruly. Sorry to trouble you," Qian Meiji said apologetically, smoothing her hair as she sat down beside Flynn Pang. The way she said it made it sound like my eldest and second son had popped out of her belly. I ignored her, took a sip of tea, and asked my eldest son, Jongwo, "All right, what's the urgent matter that you insisted I come for, Mom?" "Dad wants to marry Aunt Qian." Seeing that my elder brother looked uneasy and couldn't bring himself to say it, Pang Chunhua blurted it out like pouring beans from a bamboo tube. Flynn Pang looked at me smugly, exchanging a knowing smile with Qian Meiji. This pair of turtle and mung bean that have taken a fancy to each other. Just one more look and I'd vomit up last night's dinner. "What, are you inviting me to officiate your wedding or to drink at your banquet?" I burst out laughing. "It's Meiji. She's pregnant," Flynn Pang said with a smug look, while Qian Meiji shyly lowered her head, gently stroking her barely noticeable belly and chiding, "Oh, stop it, it's so embarrassing." Phut. I was so shocked I spat out my green tea. Almost 50 and still managing to produce a pearl from an old clam. You're really something. I couldn't help but give Turtle and Mung Bin a thumbs up, looking at my children's faces, which looked like they'd just eaten shit. I suddenly understood, with an extra embryo, there's one more person to fight for the house and money. Although the little brat hasn't been born yet, its mother is certainly no pushover. No wonder the eldest looked like he had something to say but held back, refusing to answer no matter how I pressed him. Turns out he was too ashamed to mention his old man's good deed. Just 2 months after the divorce, he's already managed to create another little brat. TSK. Truly age hasn't diminished his vigor. The essence of 3 generations of the Pang family's single-line inheritance must have all accumulated in him. No wonder the eldest and second sons have been taking turns calling me these past few days, even coming in person to invite me. If we delay any longer, with those little brats popping out one after another, who knows if the old man's half of the cake might just crumble into dust. Good thing I got away quickly. Suppressing a laugh, I lowered my head and took a sip of tea. It's not that I don't care about my children, it's just too hilarious. Ha ha ha, the wicked are tormented by their own kind. All right, congratulations, old Pang, I said, barely managing to stop laughing under the resentful gazes of the eldest and second brother, pulling out a 10-yuan bill. "Congratulations. May you two have a happy marriage and be blessed with a precious child." The turtle looked smug, while the mung bean's face turned ashen. "Oh, right. This 10-yuan bill was the change I got from pork rong at the market this morning, covered in grease stains and reeking of an unpleasant odor." Qian Meiji couldn't hold back and ran out to vomit. Flynn Pang was so startled that he ran out without even putting on his shoes. "Your father has truly found his soulmate. Back when I was giving birth to your eldest brother, I screamed in pain for 2 days and nights on the Kang bed, while he slept like a log in the next room. When he woke up and saw it was a boy, he was so overjoyed that he ate the sugar eggs meant to nourish me." I tapped the table with 2 fingers. "What's your plan in all this, Mom? If you ask me, you'll need to fork out some more money, with one more person to split it. 5 million won't be enough." Pang Chunhua, the most impatient, stepped forward again to lead the charge. "Judging by how Dad dotes on her, it might not just be one more person splitting the money." The eldest daughter-in-law saw things clearly. That woman hasn't even registered the marriage with our dad yet. What right does she have to claim a share of our Pang family's property, even with his usual composure? The eldest brother couldn't hold back any longer. Who knows where that bastard came from? I don't believe our dad could still father a child at his age. Sometimes even I feel. The second brother, as blunt as an ox, was abruptly silenced by his wife's sharp kick under the table. They haven't registered their marriage yet. This surprised me a bit. Yeah, they went to the Civil Affairs Bureau 3 times. The first time, the system was being upgraded and couldn't process the application. The second time, just as they stepped out, the demolition office called a meeting for everyone, so they didn't make it. The third time was even more ridiculous. My dad got pickpocketed on the way, losing his ID card, household register, and all his money. Now he's still waiting for the replacements. Pang Chunhua, guileless as ever, chattered between cracking melon seeds. It's really strange how every single time, something just happens to come up. With a quick glance, I noticed my eldest daughter-in-law guiltily touching her nose, while the second one subtly hid behind Jianjun. Maybe our Pang ancestors just don't approve of her and won't let her be a Pang family daughter-in-law. Only someone as simple-minded as Jianjun could say something like that. I can't control who your father marries. But you're still flesh of my flesh. If we're dividing the family assets, I'll naturally side with you. I made my position clear. But don't even think about my share. I've only ever been your mother. While your father might not always be just your father, Mom makes a good point. Besides, the 1.5 million and half the house that Mom got were court-ordered, set in stone and unchangeable. The eldest, being the quick-witted scholar, caught on immediately. I'm almost 60 and certainly can't have children anymore, nor will I find another partner. If anything were to happen to me, the inheritance would naturally go to my children. Nowadays, the money in my hands has become the most secure and reliable thing. Let's just divide the family assets now. Who knows what changes the future may bring? The eldest daughter-in-law declared decisively. The second and third sons also nodded repeatedly. After all, it's better to have a bird in the hand. Alright, if that's how it's gonna be, let's get this done today. I clapped my hands, brushing off the melon seed shells from my clothes, and led the kids straight to the demolition office. Seeing our group storming toward the demolition office with such determination, Qian Meiji, who was too nauseous to stand, hurriedly pushed old Pang to catch up with us. If she hadn't been so weak in the legs, she probably would have wanted to come along herself. Luckily, she didn't have the strength to follow, under the relentless pleading and tearful pressure from his children. Flynn Pang didn't put up much resistance. He followed the terms of the divorce agreement and notarized distribution, collected the property deed from the demolition office, and completed the transfer of ownership that very day. Of course, to settle things quickly, I also compromised, originally agreed to 5 properties. I took only 2 to avoid complications down the road, precisely because I gave up half a property. My children thought I was worried they wouldn't have enough to split and saw it as a concession on my part. They all cooperated fully, urging Flynn Pang to finalize the property transfer for me that very day. With everything settled, the other half of my heart finally found peace, returning kindness for kindness. Seeing Flynn Pang's reluctant and resentful expression, I offered some advice. Old Pang, let me be blunt. How many years do you have left? Who do you expect to take care of you in your old age? If you fall ill, will Zhongwo and Jianjun step up? Or will that grape-sized embryo in Qian Meiji's belly be reliable? Everyone tends to seek advantage and avoid harm. Flynn Pang, immersed in the joy of having a child in his old age, quickly grasped the point. That goes without saying. My Zhongwo and Jianjun are both outstanding. Why else would I divide all my property between them? Oh really? You're planning to divide it? I thought you were going to take the house and money back to Qian Meiji to win her favor. I sneered, deliberately needling him. After decades of marriage, I knew exactly where his weak spot was. Men without ability fear nothing more than being called henpecked. They'll cling desperately to their masculine pride no matter what. Flynn Pang was furious. What nonsense are you talking about? Rewards and favors? I've already made up my mind. The eldest gets one apartment, the second gets another, and the last one is for me to live in. When I die, it'll go to Chunhua. Dad, What about me? That's not fair. Pang Chunhua panicked. Who knew when the old man would die, and even if he did, there were so many people eyeing the property, one misstep, and the apartment could slip through her fingers. The eldest and second sons, having secured their benefits, exchanged a glance but didn't say much. Thanks, Dad, whatever you decide, we brothers have no objections. Ah, don't worry, my dear girl, would I ever shortchange you? Flynn Pang reassured her. Since your brothers are getting the apartments, I'll favor you a bit more with the money. Here's the deal, the eldest and second sons each get 300,000. The third son, who isn't getting a house, gets 400,000, and the remaining 500,000. This old man will keep for retirement and to raise the youngest one in Aunt Mai's belly. How's that? With that, he gave Pang Chunhua a meaningful look, signaling her to hold off on making a scene as there would be benefits later. This time, none of the three siblings had any objections. Fearing that delays might bring trouble, the group quickly went to the housing authority to transfer the property and to the bank to complete the money transfer. After such a long tug-of-war, they finally reached a happy ending that satisfied everyone. It was just Flynn Pang acting on impulse. After dividing the assets, he went back only to have Qian Meiji scratch his face, crying and threatening to get an abortion, to appease her. He had to give her 100,000 yuan upfront. Not wanting to live alongside the villagers who had returned after relocation, I quickly sold the 2 resettlement properties under my name and bought 2 dilapidated courtyards in the old city district. 10 years later, this area would become the most bustling downtown commercial street, with land prices beyond estimation. Everything had settled, and I thought I could finally breathe a sigh of relief, but little did I know. It was the beginning of lurking dangers. Who would have thought that the 100,000 yuan would stir up a hornet's nest? It turned out that Flynn Pang's wink and nod that day was a promise to secretly give Chunhua an additional 100,000 yuan, which kept her from making a scene at the time. Thanks to Flynn Pang's favoritism, Chunhua had been a little tyrant since childhood. All the best food and drinks in the house were reserved for her, and snatching things from her brothers was a common occurrence. Everyone indulged her, so she assumed that Flynn Pang's 500,000 yuan would eventually find its way into her pocket. Relying on her sweet talk and persistent efforts, who would have thought someone else would beat me to the nest? According to the eldest daughter-in-law, it was quite a scene. Police cars and ambulances all rushing into the village. Qian Meiji lost her child, and Pang Chunhua got her head split open. Both sides suffered heavy losses. After all, it was flesh of my flesh. Though my words were harsh, my heart couldn't bear it, so I hurried to the hospital. In my past life, my children were unfilial, and I suffered greatly. In this life, I struck first and lived comfortably. Forgetting the days of hardship, there's no helping it. When it comes to children, mothers tend to forget the pain once the wounds heal. The hatred, when it comes, is often out of frustration, wishing they could do better. At the hospital, Flynn Pang, unshaven and disheveled, crouched outside with his head in his hands. To his left was the ward of his beloved youngest daughter, and to his right, the ward of his old flame who had lost her child. Truly like a mouse in a bellows, caught between 2 blasts of air. I ignored him and went straight into the left ward. Chunhua had thick gauze wrapped around her head, and as soon as she saw me enter, she cried out pitifully, "Mom, you silly child. Didn't you and Qian Meiji seem to be getting along just fine the other day? How did you end up falling out over just 100,000 yuan? Didn't your dad give you 400,000? I wanted to scold her more, but seeing her miserable state, I couldn't bring myself to. You can know a person's face but not their heart. I thought Qian Meiji was just after a place to settle, but I never expected she'd set her sights on my dad's money." Chunhua was full of grievances as she spoke. "Mom, you don't know this, but the 400,000 yuan my dad gave me was snatched away by creditors before I could even warm to it. I thought, fine, let them take it. At least all the debts are cleared now. My dad even promised to give me another 100,000 yuan, so life would still be manageable, but who would have thought that old witch Chen Meiji would sweet-talk my dad into giving her my 100,000 yuan. That damned woman, my dad loves me the most. And she's not only stealing my money but also taking my dad away from me. Woo-woo. Her agitation worsened her mild concussion, making her head throb and feel nauseous, and so, even while vomiting, she managed to complain, "Mom, eldest brother, second brother, I only cursed a few times." Didn't lay a finger on Chen Meiji, but her son Daong smashed my head open with a brick. Woo-woo. She cried so pitifully that second brother Jianjun was furious and stood up, ready to charge next door for a fight, scaring Flynn Pang outside, who desperately held the door shut to prevent it from opening. I flipped through Chuanhua's examination reports. The diagnosis read, head trauma, mild concussion, no organic damage detected for now, recommended hospitalization for observation for a week. The issue wasn't too serious, but one anomaly caught my attention. What did your dad say? I suppressed my confusion and kept a straight face. What else could he say? He just gave me another 100,000, but why should that old witch Chen Meiji get any money? She's neither married to him nor registered in our Pang family's household register. She's really a 1,000-year-old fox who's become a spirit, old and shameless. Pang Chunhua grew angrier as she ranted. She's been up to no good since I was a kid, always coming over to our house, bribing me with candies and fruits. Turns out she was just trying to swindle my money. I had almost forgotten. But like Flynn Pang, Chen Meiji had always favored Chunhua since childhood. Even during the toughest years when every family struggled to put food on the table, she would bring a few candies to secretly give to Chunhua. Her own son, Daong, never got such treatment. He would often drool with envy, following Chunhua around like a little puppy. Second brother, you go and make that old fox cough up the money. I was supposed to have 200,000. Chunhua was still fuming with indignation. Laoer was about to get up when I stopped him. I'll go. Chen Meiji lay pale-faced on the bed, once a middle-aged woman with lingering charm. She now looked like she had shed her painted skin, appearing as a white-haired, wrinkled old woman. What? Enjoying the show? Li Guixiang. Seeing me, she mustered a bit of spirit, her eyes flashing with a hateful, devouring light. Not really. Chunhua sent me to collect the money for her. Pang Chunhua is nothing but an ungrateful wretch. A heartless little wench. I've wasted my. As if realizing she'd said too much, she abruptly stopped speaking. She glanced at Chen Daong, who was serving her chicken soup beside her. Wasted my affection on her. Right, she's just a child. Don't take it to heart. I peeled an apple, but she didn't take it. So I set it on the table and casually flipped through the medical reports, confirming my suspicions. Let's talk about why both you and Chunhua have panda blood, I said as I picked up the chilled chicken soup and splashed it on her face, demanding sharply, and what blood type is your Daong? Chen Daong let out a loud shout and was about to stop me, but upon hearing this, he froze in shock and confusion. Flynn Pang also rushed in frantically. Panda blood, or Rh-negative blood type, is extremely rare. In all of China, less than 1% of the population has this blood type. How is it such a coincidence that both you and Chunhua have it? Besides, both Flynn Pang and I have type O blood. I suppose Daong is also type O, isn't he? Chen Meiji closed her eyes and remained silent. Old Pang, you speak, Guixiang. Family scandals shouldn't be aired in public. Let's discuss this when we get back. So you admit it's a scandal. What are you afraid of? Daong isn't an outsider. Speak up, say it right here. Chen Daong's wolf-like eyes pinned him fiercely to the ground. Flynn Pang finally parted his lips after a long pause and spoke. Times were hard back then. Every family struggled to put food on the table. Our situation was slightly better, but Meiji, a widow who had just given birth, couldn't even lift the lid off her cooking pot. 3 growing boys can eat a father poor, and besides, Daong was born sturdy and strong, while Chunhua was so frail she could fit in the palm of a hand. So, to please the woman you loved, you swapped your own son to suffer in hardship and brought her little girl over to live in comfort. It wasn't exactly like that. Daong was right next door, and I could keep an eye on him. No wonder I couldn't even get a sip of hot rice soup after risking my life to give birth. I thought it was because you didn't like having a daughter, but turns out you were off visiting the vixen next door. Give me back my son. I gritted my teeth in fury, lunging forward to punch and kick. Flynn Pang, knowing he was in the wrong, covered his head and didn't even dare to dodge, letting me vent my anger. The commotion drew the attention of the children next door, who came over to watch the spectacle, a soap opera-worthy plot twist like swapping babies. Something you'd only see on TV, never crossed my mind as something that would happen to me, and to think, I ended up sending my own son away and raising someone else's daughter. Flynn Pang really pulled a fast one on me. Showed his true colors. Old Master Pang must have committed sins in his past life to be saddled with such a brainless, unfilial son who muddled the family bloodline. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't harm its own cubs, yet he's both stupid and cruel. Wait, could it be that he did something shady and actually believes Pang Chunhua is his biological daughter? I kicked Flynn Pang and said, "Tell me, is Pang Chunhua your child?" Guixiang, I didn't mean to. I was drunk that day. Now it makes sense. He thought both children were his own flesh and blood, unable to bear seeing his daughter suffer. He swapped his son over instead. After all, they were both right in front of him, and he could keep an eye on them anytime. Such brains and strategy. Truly impressive. What a pity. Some people might have outsmarted themselves. I looked at Flynn Pang with pity. TSK. Have you ever considered that Pang Chunhua might not actually be your child? You're talking nonsense. That's impossible. Flynn Pang jumped 3 feet high like a frog whose sore foot had been stepped on. Sister Guixiang, I may have wronged you, but you can't slander me like this and tarnish my reputation. Chen Meiji weakly defended herself, 2 clear streams of tears welling up from the corners of her eyes. How pitiful. Get out, get out. Flynn Pang was so anxious that he started pushing me out, having stolen the former village belle. And even secretly had her bear his child was probably Flynn Pang's most hidden pride. Now that I suspected he was being cuckolded, raising someone else's bastard for decades. It really hit a nerve. Then let's do a paternity test. Chen Daong, the person most involved, was surprisingly the calmest, stepping between us. All 5 of us will take the paternity test. Hearing her son's words, Chen Meiji's face quickly turned pale, like an ink painting dropped into water, instantly losing its vitality. The outcome spoke for itself. Everyone understood. Sure enough, subsequent paternity tests revealed, Chen Daong is the son of me and Flynn Pang, while Pang Chunhua is Chen Meiji's biological child but not Flynn Pang's. What a juicy piece of gossip the cold weather brings. Upon hearing the result, Flynn Pang was so excited that he fainted. The first thing he did upon waking up was to demand Pang Chunhua and Chen Meiji repay the money. After all, the mother and daughter had taken a full 600,000 from him. This was like a dung beetle encountering diarrhea, a wasted effort. Even a fool could tell they wouldn't repay the money. If they didn't seize the chance to extort more, they'd be doing you a favor. The last I heard, it ended up being left unresolved, although Chen Daong is my child. He's been siding with Chen Meiji all these years and has caused me no small amount of trouble. I just can't bring myself to feel close to him. Let Flynn Pang bear the consequences of his own misdeeds. As for me, at most I'll give him a small apartment when he gets married. That's already going above and beyond. I thought about letting someone off the hook, but little did I know they'd want my life instead. That day, Chen Daong asked to meet me, and I also had some things to discuss with him. So we arranged to meet at our usual Sichuan restaurant. Having spent a lifetime around the stove, my only hobby now is tasting various delicacies. If fate allows, I might exchange a few words with the cooks about shared culinary passions. When I left home, Mimi was being clingy, making me a few minutes late. Chen Daong had already ordered. "Auntie Lee, I got your favorite husband and wife lung slices and shadow beef. Come and try them." I smiled as I took my seat. What a shame. I've never eaten offal, and I've never acquired a taste for beef. These must be Chen Meiji's favorite dishes. I waved my hand to order a few more dishes, and the head chef came out cheerfully to greet us. The food was served quickly. "Daong, come on, try this." Only regular customers get dishes prepared by the head chef himself. much more skilled than his apprentices. "Here, try this piece of mapo tofu," noticing I hadn't touched the food he ordered. Chen Dayoung's expression changed slightly. His eyes flickered toward the screen partition before he quickly composed himself. "Aunt Lee, try this pu'er tea, it's very smooth and helps lower blood pressure and cholesterol." I picked up the teacup and took a deep breath of its aroma. "Rich and aged, excellent tea. It tastes even more fragrant. Have a try." Chen Dayoung stared at me intently, as if he couldn't wait to feed me himself. I made a show of drinking but then set the teacup down. "Dayoung, you've suffered so much all these years. No, Auntie Lee, please drink your tea quickly. Listen to me. Let's talk after you've had some tea." Chen Dayoung grew impatient seeing that I hadn't taken a sip for a long time. "Dayoung," I said seriously, "though you didn't grow up by my side, I know you're not a bad person at heart. Don't let the grudges of the older generation drag you down. Once you take the wrong path, it's hard to turn back." Chen Dayoung's face darkened. His fists clenched so tightly that veins bulged on the back of his hands. He forced a smile and said, "Aunt Lee, I don't understand what you're talking about. Hurry up and try this tea. Don't let it go to waste." Having children. The child struggles to be born, the mother risks death. "My child, I gave you a way out. Yet you insist on rushing toward death." The abrupt ring of the phone shattered our silence. "Sorry, my cat is sick. I have to go back." I set down the water glass. Along with this shallow mother-son bond, after gaining my freedom as a single man, I adopted a golden tabby. Unlike the Huang family's big yellow dog that used to bark wildly at me, Mimi is especially clingy to me. Well-behaved and warm, more obedient than a child. A few days later, I went on a trip out of town, and upon returning, I heard that the Pang family was involved in another fatal lawsuit. It turned out that Chen Dayoung, resentful of being the Pang family's biological son yet receiving nothing, went to confront Flynn Pang. Old Pang, feeling both pity and guilt, ended up giving him 200,000 yuan. Chen Dayoung was indignant. They were all Pang family men. So why could the eldest and second sons each get a house plus 300,000, while even some bastard from who knows where got 500,000? He got the least and was treated the worst. In a fit of anger, he pretended to be filial and added poisonous mushrooms to the chicken soup, poisoning the entire family and sending them all to the hospital. Flynn Pang was moved by the third son's filial piety and ate several bowls heartily. He remains unconscious to this day. The others, for the sake of appearances, only took a few sips. After getting their stomachs pumped, they were mostly fine. To be honest, I had long suspected that Chen Dayoung's mental state was off. He was extreme and irritable. That day at the Sichuan restaurant, I kept my guard up and pre-installed a tiny camera in the dense greenery serving as a partition. Sure enough, it captured footage of Chen Dayoung and Pang Chunhua discussing poisoning me to inherit my estate. I had initially hesitated, thinking of self-preservation. But after the poisonous mushroom incident, Chen Dayoung became wanted by the police. Seizing the opportunity, I handed the video over to the authorities. The police followed the leads and arrested Chen Dayoung and Pang Chunhua, who were posing as a building maintenance worker and a cleaner, respectively, plotting to stage an elevator accident to send me to the afterlife and claim my inheritance. For the crimes of spreading hazardous substances and attempted intentional homicide, the principal offender Chen Dayoung was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while the accomplice Pang Chunhua received a 5-year sentence. Chen Meiji, upon hearing the news of her adopted son and biological daughter being imprisoned in the hospital, suffered a sudden deterioration of her condition that very day, leading to uncontrollable hemorrhaging, due to the extreme rarity of her panda blood type. The blood bank's insufficient supply couldn't provide a timely transfusion, ultimately resulting in her untimely death. As for Flynn Pang, whether by fortune or misfortune, although he was hospitalized and unconscious, early-stage stomach cancer was detected. With the removal of the cancerous lesion, his survival rate was quite promising. In his previous life, by the time stomach cancer was discovered, it was already in its late stages, and he passed away within days. Upon waking, Flynn Pang was unsure whether to laugh or cry. Through a twist of fate, Chen Daong had inadvertently secured his father a chance at survival. Whether this was an act of revenge or repayment remained unclear. I never would have imagined that Flynn Pang would lie in a hospital bed for a month, yet the 300,000 yuan needed for the radical surgery still hadn't been fully raised. I had thought the 200,000 yuan left from his relocation compensation would cover most of it, and his two sons could chip in the rest to make up the total. Who knew that a while ago, when he started feeling a dull pain in his abdomen, not only did he avoid going to the hospital for a checkup, but he also spent over 100,000 yuan on useless health supplements. Now there's a huge gap in the surgery funds, and his daughters-in-law are tightening their own purse strings, each hoping the other would contribute more. No wonder he called crying poor the other day, probably hoping I'd foot the bill. Talk about pushing the limits of shamelessness. Honestly, even if Flynn Pang drags this out till he drops dead, it'd still feel like justice served across 2 lifetimes. But since I've inherited half the Pang family fortune in this life, I owe it to old man Pang to repay his kindness by sparing his only son. After this, we're even. First, I went to the eldest son's house, where the room was filled with laughter and joy as they were celebrating their granddaughter Minmin's birthday party. I pushed the door open, and the atmosphere instantly froze. The eldest son frantically wiped the cake smudge off his face and said awkwardly, "Mom, what brings you here? If I didn't come, your father would have died in the hospital," I snapped. The daughter-in-law took off the paper crown from her head and slipped into the kitchen to make tea. The granddaughter greeted me with a "Hello, Grandma," before retreating to her room. "Jiongwo, your father gave you 300,000 yuan. How could you bear not to pay for his surgery, when you were a child and had a high fever that wouldn't break? Your father carried you on his back for over 10 miles of mountain roads in the middle of the night, nearly getting attacked by wolves, just to save your life. How heartless can you be?" I couldn't help but slap his arm twice in frustration. "Mom, the money's already been deposited into Minmin's study abroad fund. It can't be withdrawn for 3 months. The daughter-in-law interjected, bringing out a plate of fruit to diffuse the situation. But this time, the institution is definitely reliable. I saw my eldest son hanging his head in silence, looking exactly like his father when he refused to admit his mistakes, and my heart sank. "Mom, take these 5,000 yuan first. Jiongwo just got his paycheck yesterday. Don't worry. We'll definitely cover Dad's medical expenses that we're responsible for. As for the rest, even if we can't afford it, we'll try our best to figure something out," my eldest daughter-in-law said sweetly, shooing me out the door as if I were a beggar. Next, I went to my second son's place. That spineless coward, despite his burly build, cowered the moment his wife glared at him. After stammering and groveling for ages, he finally came out with reddened eyes and handed me 10,000 yuan. What the hell is this? Every one of them either has no conscience or married someone without one. It's time to teach them a lesson. I wrote a heartfelt letter titled "To My Sons," made 2 copies of the hospital payment notice, and sent one to my eldest son's workplace. The other, along with the letter, I posted at the entrance of my second son's restaurant. Within a few days, my son and daughter-in-law stormed into the hospital in a rage. "Mom, how could you do this?" The hospital bill was sent to the school, and it ruined Jiongwo's chance at finally getting promoted to full professor. "Your son has been stuck as an associate professor for over a decade, and this was the final hurdle." The eldest daughter-in-law was furious, practically ready to tear me apart. "Yeah, Mom, that day, the bill was posted at the restaurant entrance, and so many customers saw it, they stopped coming to eat." The second daughter-in-law complained loudly. I couldn't be bothered to waste words on these ungrateful wolves. I spread the latest bill on the hospital bed. "Supporting your parents is the bare minimum of human decency. If you can't even do that, it proves you don't deserve to be professors or business owners. Let me make this clear. If anyone fails to pay the medical bills on time again, don't blame me for pushing your father to have a little chat with your bosses, colleagues, and neighbors." The eldest, being a public servant, didn't dare to go too far and managed to scrape together 100,000 yuan. The second son was shameless, terrified of his wife and utterly unreasonable. It wasn't until I sent him a video of him strolling around with a young, beautiful woman that he sneaked into the hospital like a thief. Mom, these 50,000 yuan are all my secret savings. That video was a misunderstanding. Please don't let Xiaojie's mom see it, or you might never see your son again. With that, he started sobbing uncontrollably. A truly pitiful sight. I paid the remaining tens of thousands myself, treating it as settling this karmic debt spanning 2 lifetimes. The surgery was successful, and my role was done. When I saw Flynn Pang again, I barely recognized him, a grimy old t-shirt stained with yellow spots, wearing flip-flops with the front torn open, rummaging through the trash bin outside the Senior Citizens University. He had just found a plastic bottle when a sanitation worker rushed to snatch it, and soon they were in a heated argument. Hurling insults and spitting in rage, I held up the parasol to shield my face, my steps never pausing as I hurried to attend my favorite opera class at the senior university. After the surgery, I went abroad for travel, no longer bothering with that family's messy affairs. I only heard that Flynn Pang ended up living in the smallest, undistributed resettlement apartment, having originally promised to give it to whoever took care of him in his old age. Under public pressure, the eldest son's wife dutifully cared for him for over half a year, only for the old man, egged on by the second son, to try secretly selling the apartment to buy a wedding home for his eldest grandson. Shoro Jie, furious, the eldest son's wife quit on the spot. Later on, the old man's condition worsened, bedridden and unable to even sip porridge. He would curse loudly at home whenever he had the strength. He also made daily phone calls to file complaints everywhere, causing such a disturbance that the community had no choice but to comply with his demands. They arranged for a legal aid lawyer to sue his sons and daughters-in-law, demanding they fulfill their filial obligations. Under the pressure of the court ruling and public opinion, and ashamed of the disgrace, the sons and daughters-in-law decided to go all the way and sent the old man to a nursing home. The nursing home cost 3,000 a month, offered no medical services, and merely provided food and drink. Whether one could actually eat or drink depended entirely on their own ability. As for the caregivers, each was responsible for over 20 elderly residents. There was no patience or genuine care to speak of. If they didn't torment you with subtle cruelty, it was already considered a sign of conscience. At first, the eldest and second sons took turns visiting every month, but gradually it became every 3 months, then half a year, and eventually they wouldn't even glance his way for a whole year. The following spring festival, Flynn Pang passed away, far from the doctor's optimistic prediction that with proper care, he could live another 10 or 20 years without issue. It can only be said that repeated actions form habits, habits shape character, and character determines fate. Not everyone can defy destiny and change their fate.